Of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. We are meeting today pursuant to Standing Order 1064 at the request of 4 members of the committee to discuss the sanctions imposed by the People's Republic of China.
To ensure an orderly meeting, I would encourage all participants to turn off their microphone when they are not speaking and to always address their comments to the chair.
Ask members to use the raised hand function in Zoom. And Mr. Clerk, if we can work through you with respect to colleagues present in the room and their desire to intervene in the discussion. Mr. Hota, I will turn the floor over to you now to introduce the motion. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm just gonna... Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm assuming I have to officially move this motion then?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just, first of all, just for the record, I will read the motion into the record so that everyone knows the 1064 standing order that, and the issue that we're meeting on today. The motion reads as that the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development strongly condemn the unacceptable sanctions imposed by the People's Republic of China against one of the committee's vice chairs, the Member of Parliament for Wellington Halton Hills, and the House of Commons Subcommittee on International Human Rights, which represent an affront to Canada's democracy and parliamentary system. The reason the 4 members that signed this motion and wanted to meet in a special meeting today is because on Saturday, we all found out that China had imposed these sanctions against Mr. Chong and our subcommittee. And obviously, I'm sure most members around this and all parliamentarians were very outraged to see that these sanctions were arbitrarily imposed against Canadian parliamentarians, and that these sanctions are nothing more than retaliatory measures taken, which I feel are unacceptable and unjustified, and I'm sure we'll hear from other members as well as to their feelings on it. We see it as an attack on democracy, on transparency, on freedom of expression, and we think that there should be a united and clear stance taken by parliamentarians and especially by this committee, first and foremost, to condemn this action by China. And Canada is going to, as we've heard from our Foreign Affairs Minister and from other parliamentarians as well over the last few days, that Canada is going to continue to defend our democracy and the partnerships that we have around the world that are working in unison with us to defend democracy and rights and freedoms, and especially human rights of people in China and around the world. So that's the reason that I want to move this motion and why I feel it is timely that we do it today and that we have a vote on this as soon as possible, because I think that we need to send that message out. So that's all I'll say for now, and hand it over to I guess the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hota. Mr. Chung, you're next in line.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Madame Sahota for introducing this motion. Let me just say that the sanctions put on me and others in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Europe are twofold. They have twofold. They have a twofold effect. They first prevent us from traveling to China, and they prevent Chinese institutions and citizens from doing business with the group, with the individuals sanctioned. I've got no business in China. I've got no assets in China, and I have no plans to travel to China. My wife and I decided some 2 years ago that we would not be traveling to China for the foreseeable future, ever since they decided to detain Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Spaver on December 10th of 2018, and subsequently when Beijing's authorities decided to crack down on Hong Kong with the introduction of a draconian extradition treaty. And so in practical terms, these sanctions will have no impact on me. But they are an attempt to silence us. They're an attempt to silence us. They're an attempt to stop us from speaking up on the violations of international law in the form of the 1948 Genocide Convention that China is perpetrating in its genocide against the Uyghur Muslim minority in Xinjiang province. Their attempt to silence us in speaking up on the violations of an international treaty, the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration, which guarantees Hong Kong's guarantees Hong Kong's autonomy under the one country, two systems doctrine for 50 years. And I'll finish by saying this, that we cannot, as Canadian parliamentarians, allow that to happen. We cannot allow these sanctions to silence us. And, you know, what that means for me is that I think we should remain focused on, not on the sanctions, but on why we were sanctioned, which is the human rights abuses taking place against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. We should be focused on the violations of an international treaty in Hong Kong, you know, the continued persecution of the Tibetan people, the detention of Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Spaver, the fact that Mr. Schellenberg has been arbitrarily put on death row, and the ongoing 2-decade detention of Mr. Hussein Jalil, whose family lives in Burlington, Ontario, and whose children have never known their father. And so we need to remain focused on those issues. And so I appreciate Madame Sahota introducing the motion. I will be supporting it, but I really strongly believe that this committee and the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations should remain focused on those issues and not worry about the sanctions that have been placed on officials here and abroad. So let's remain focused on the issues at hand and continue to speak up publicly on these issues to give voice to the voiceless. Thank you, Madame Sahota, for introducing the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chung. I have Mr. Harris and then Mr. Genuis.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on this motion, which I think is going to receive, I'm certain, unanimous consent from this committee. We all stand in solidarity with Michael Chong, who was named in the sanctions, the subcommittee, and indeed all parliamentarians in our country who have spoken out on this issue, and the unanimous vote of Parliament in respect to the situation in Xinjiang. So I think it's incumbent on us to respond and respond strongly. I think Mr. Chong stated it well when he said we cannot allow these sanctions to silence us, and I think it is clearly, as was pointed out by Ms. Sahota and Mr. Chong, and by the letter sent to the chair, that this is, and the motion itself, this is clearly an affront to democracy and to the parliamentary system that we are a part of, and that we are able to, fortunately for us, we are able to use freely, speak about violations of human rights, whether they be in China or elsewhere in the world, and we will continue to do so. I believe we should perhaps even state that in the motion itself, and I want to propose an amendment to that to say that, to add another sentence and to suggest that this motion be reported to the House as well. The additional sentence I would add, and I would put this forth as a motion, that we add at the end of the sentence which refers to the sanctions and condemning the unacceptable sanctions which represent an affront to Canada's democracy and parliamentary system, to add the sentence, as parliamentarians, we will continue to actively denounce human rights violations and breaches of international law in keeping with our respect for basic human rights, and that this motion be reported to the House. So I'll repeat that, Madam Chair, and for the purposes of the translation and for the clerk, I'll repeat it slowly. As parliamentarians, we will continue to actively denounce human rights violations and breaches of international law in keeping with our respect for basic human rights, and that this motion be reported to the House. I take it that's in order, Mr. Chair, and I will let the debate continue. I think I think it's a fairly basic addition to this, but it reinforces the statement of Mr. Chong's that we must make it clear that we will not be silenced by this action by the People's Republic of China. You know, they were sanctioned for violations of human rights. They purport to sanction the Canadian parliamentarians for acting out on our support for human rights and our belief in the democratic system and our ability to participate fully in that. I think it's fitting that we respond in this way and make it clear that we will not be silenced, that we will continue to do our duty as parliamentarians and exercise our freedom of expression and freedom of voice to stand up for human rights violations, against human rights violations wherever we see them. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Harris, thank you very much. There's an amendment on the floor. I had Mr. Genuis and Mr. Bergeron on the original motion. I have Mr. Oliphant's hand up since, I'm assuming, on the amendment, Mr. Oliphant?
It is up, sorry.
On the amendment, Mr. Oliphant?
Yes, it's on the amendment.
Yes, please go ahead.
And I would just very quickly say that I will be supporting that amendment, and I think my colleagues on our side will support it as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion points? Any other discussion on the amendment? Mr. Genuis is shaking his head. Monsieur Oliphant, sorry, Monsieur Bergeron, on the amendment?
Si Monsieur Genuis veut.
If Mr. Genuis would like to speak first, his name was first on the list. I would gladly cede the first turn to speak to the amendment if you would like to take the floor right away.
Do you want to speak on the amendment?
I had a comment on the main motion, not the amendment. So
okay, we'll keep you in place for the main motion. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bergeron, sur l'amendement.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. On the amendment, please. I think that it's timely to allow this motion to be heard more widely rather than simply being heard within this committee. I understand that a motion passed by this committee is important indeed. However, given the issue before us, and the issue before us, after all, is our ability to do our work without this work being hampered or that this work be subject of any pressure whatsoever. If there's a single rule that is imminent in the British parliamentary system, it is this very ability by parliamentarians to execute their work safe from any pressure. And if we accept the least kind of pressure from the outside, if we cannot accept this, we can't accept that from the inside. We certainly can't accept that from the outside. I think it's timely to present this issue to the House. My colleagues have heard me speak to this recently, and I said within the same committee that I'm fully aware of the fact that the opposition might have developed this reflex somewhat too much, that is, to have motions adopted in committees, then to have them put into a report, which then have to be tabled at the House. I think that it behooves us to legislate, and that is not only up to MPs, but also the opposition. So that is why, on another issue, I had moved an amendment to withdraw this clarification. But in this specific case, the fact that we're bringing this motion to the House is all the more important, in my mind, because what is at issue here is one of the fundamental principles of the British parliamentary system. And I believe that the House must address the issue and that members must be able to speak to this fundamental issue. I think this additional sentence on human rights is all the more relevant, especially because it is our colleagues from the Subcommittee on International Human Rights who have, if you like, were behind this when they proposed the recognition of the genocide that is currently taking place in Xinjiang against the Uyghurs. And that this subcommittee and Mr. Chung have been subjected to these sanctions by the Popular Republic of China. So, Mr. Chairman, as you've understood, I completely concur with this proposed amendment moved by Mr. Harris. As well, I believe that you understand that, of course, I will be supporting fully the motions put forward by our Liberal friends. Thank you very much, Mr. Bergeron.
On the amendment on the floor. Seeing none, let me seek the committee's unanimous consent to approve the amendment as passed by Mr. Harris, so that we don't have to go to a recorded vote. I don't see any opposition. Is there any opposition to the amendment? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, we have passed the amendment proposed by Mr. Harris, and we're back to discussion on the main motion as amended. And I had Mr. Genuis first in line, and invite colleagues to raise their hand to join him in the discussion on the main motion as amended. Mr. Genuis.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with everything that I've heard from all members, all sides thus far. This committee. I think this is an important motion, and I'm happy to support it. But I think we also need to really heed the call from Mr. Chong to focus on the core issue here. The core issue is the government of China has retaliated against specific individuals as a form of recognition of their leadership on the issue of responding to the genocide of Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims in China. As the subcommittee heard, the largest mass detention of a minority community since the Holocaust, a genocide that involves putting people in concentration camps, that involves forced sterilization, forced abortion, forced insertion of IUDs, systematic sexual violence, and organ harvesting. It is that reality compelled parliamentarians to respond at the time of the initial subcommittee study and statement, and led most members of parliament to be present and voting in favor of the resolution put forward by Mr. Chong recognizing that genocide. And that leadership by the subcommittee, as well as by Mr. Chong with his motion, recognized in some formal sense by the Communist Party, has had ripple effects around the world. We see conversations about these issues happening in other parliaments as well, and those conversations will hopefully increase and create greater pressure on those who are perpetrating this genocide to stop the violence now. There is so much more work that is needed on the Canadian side in terms of response and leadership, and those issues are, I think, well detailed in the report from the subcommittee that we have passed along and tabled just recently. That report calls for significant strengthening of supply chain measures. It calls for Magnitsky sanctions against those responsible for this genocide. It calls for appropriate immigration measures addressing the significant vulnerability of Uyghur refugees in other countries. Of course, it's difficult for those in East Turkestan to get out, but there are refugee communities in other parts of the world who are vulnerable as a result of Chinese government pressure. There are many issues on which we need to see concrete government and policy responses. To start with, I'd like to see the government recognize this genocide and to join with parliamentarians of all parties and to join with the direction, the leadership that's been proposed by my colleague, Mr. Chong. What these sanctions show us is that the pressure, the leadership from the subcommittee and from Mr. Chong are working, are having an impact, are causing action, not just being sort of fluffed off as not a big deal. Those criticisms are having an impact. They're having and the greater that impact, the more likely that we're going to see a change in behavior. So I want to congratulate Mr. Chong for his leadership on this, the members of the subcommittee, and colleagues around the world who have been involved in these issues and have, in a sense, been recognized as well by the Communist Party in the form of these sanctions. And this just underlines how we need to continue to be strong voices for the voiceless, because whatever consequences these sanctions may cause for us as parliamentarians, they are absolutely nothing in comparison to the horrific violence being inflicted on people in China, on the Uyghur people, as well as on others throughout China who speak out, who object, and who challenge what is taking place. So we should and we can, I think, draw our strength from those people and commit ourselves to continuing in this critical fight for justice. And I encourage the government on the concrete policy areas of genocide recognition, of strengthening supply chain legislation, and on other areas that are so needed. I encourage the government to take leadership as well, and to join with parliamentarians in this critical fight. Thank you.
Mr. Genuis, thank you very much. I next have Mr. Harris and then Mr. Zuberi.
Thank you, Chair. I just first of all wanted to thank colleagues for their support for the amendment and for the notion of reporting this matter to the House. And I thank Mr. Bergeron for his very thoughtful remarks on the importance of the whole House being apprised of this motion and having an opportunity to reflect and comment on it. Indeed, this committee, the subcommittee, which was subject to the Chinese PRC as reaction and sanctions is a subcommittee of this committee, and whose report that we accepted and endorsed and reported to the House of Commons. And I think Mr. Bergeron is absolutely right that the place for this motion to be presented is to the full Parliament, because the sanctions is an affront to parliamentary democracy, and all parliamentarians are therefore affected by that and should be able to see this motion, have it presented to the House, and if at some point someone wishes to raise a debate on it, that can happen. But in any event, it will be before the House, which is an appropriate place for it to be. So I want to just thank colleagues for supporting that, and thank first of all the members of our colleagues from the Liberal Party for bringing forth this motion to allow this timely debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Monsieur Zuberi.
I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time today, for Ms. Sahota for bringing forth the motion, for Mr. Harris for bringing forth the amendments, for everybody for standing strong, and for standing in solidarity with Mr. Chong and the subcommittee, and anybody who's been targeted by these sanctions. As was mentioned by so many, we have to remain focused on the main issue, which is to reduce harm, which is to save lives, which is to stop rape, torture, forced sterilization, abortion, forced slave labor. That's the main issue. And that's why we must stand strongly in solidarity with Mr. Chong and with the subcommittee right now. So much has been said. I don't like wasting my words, but I will share that we do need to continue as a country to raise the alarm. All citizens need to continue to raise the alarm, and everybody has agency. Citizens have agency, and their agency is to share what they know with others around them, be it on social media, be it within their families, be it in their workspaces. That's a form of activism and a form of forward movement to help what we are all doing here together right now in this committee. I think as parliamentarians, and we need to think about, as was mentioned already, around the issues of how we can reduce the harm that's happening within Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. And there's thankfully been a number of measures that have been introduced. At the beginning of this year, there have been measures around imports and exports. That's a good first step. We had mandatory sanctions introduced, targeted sanctions, which were appropriate and measured. That's a very positive step and a necessary step. We had our Parliament, our House of Commons, 266-0, recognize that a genocide is in fact occurring. There's still more to do. And let's get this motion passed. Let's stand in solidarity and let's continue forward.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Zuberi.
Thank you very much.
Any other debate on the main motion as amended? Seeing none, I think we have a strong consensus. I'm going to seek the committee's unanimous consent to approve the motion as presented and amended. Is there any opposition to adoption of the motion? Seeing none, Mr. Kroik, we have adopted the motion as amended. And that takes us to the end of our scheduled point of business. Is there any other business relating to the motion under 106.4 that members wish to raise at this point? Seeing none, colleagues, thank you very much for this important discussion, and we stand adjourned until our next regularly scheduled meeting. Be safe and have a great afternoon. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.